and welcome to livealittlehigher.com. Today we will continue learning from our book, The Mystery of Marriage, by Rabbi Itzhak Ginsburg on Shalom Bayit, Peace in the Home. And a few weeks ago we learned about the unknowable head, which means that we transcend our ego and thereby cultivate modesty as an expression of the highest superconscious level of the soul. So we left there, and the purpose of modesty is not to conceal, but to reveal that inner dimension of ourselves, which is the oneness with Hashem. It's a part of us that is really hidden, and it's the essence of God. And when we're able to see and tap to this perception, to this essence of a person, then our whole reality changes. I remember many years ago, they asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory how he could stand for hours and hours to give dollars to the people that came, dollars and blessings. He was already in his late 80s and he was very, very sick. He says, because when you're counting diamonds, you don't get tired. So what he meant was that when he gave blessings and he gave dollars to people, he really wasn't looking at their corporeal self. He didn't look at the person as a person. What he was looking at each person was their essence, that godly spark that each person had inside of them. So Boaz and Ruth personifies that modesty. To give you a recap of who she was a Moabite princess that was married to a Jewish man, one of the sons of Naomi, who had left Israel because of famine. She left with her husband and two sons, and they married these Moabite princesses, and they had a tragedy. The husband died, the two sons died, and Naomi and these two widows were left. And she told these two girls, these two Moabite princesses, to stay in Moab, that they didn't need to go with her to the land of Israel, to Canaan, and suffer from famine, that they should stay. They're Moabite princesses, they're better off there. One of them stayed, and the other one, Ruth, said to her, no, I'm with you, I'm a Jew, and wherever you go, I shall go, and your people are my people. And she went with her. So when they came to the land of Israel, she looked for a job, like for a job, and she found one in Boaz's field. Boaz was a very rich man. He had just become a widow when they came. And when she came, she found a job there picking up crops. And he realized that she was a very modest woman. She used to not pick up the crops bending. She would kneel to pick them up. Like this little way of behavior just showed you how refined Ruth was. And he married her, and they merited to bring the spark of Messiah into the world. She was the mother of the great grandfather of Messiah, or the grandfather, I'm not sure. But from there comes, that union comes King David. And from King David and the line of Yehuda and Ruth come Messiah. So when she saw her, he paid special attention to her. He was very nice to her. And she asked him, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should recognize me, being that I'm a stranger? And so in Hebrew, the word stranger, nakri, and the word recognition, hakara, share the same root. And rationally, one cannot recognize a stranger. Like if you're walking in the streets in New York and you see a million people, they're strangers, you don't recognize them because you don't know them. Here, but here we ask, why did he recognize her? Why did he give her special attention if she was a stranger? And from this wording, we see that the words are an expression of wonder. And this is like that wonder, that mystery should be always between a couple. A couple should always maintain their marriage fresh and energized and like new, like they just met. There should always be that feeling of not knowing everything. And only at the suprarational level, at the unknowable head, as we said, the transcendence of the ego, do recognition and strangeness share a common root. And at that level, the paradox, while remaining a paradox, becomes resolved. So when we are, as the story of the Rebbe I just said, when we are connected at that level of the unknowable head, where we transcend our ego, and we can just tap into the essence of every person, then we recognize them, because you're not looking at the corporeal, at the physical part of the person. You're looking at the spiritual part of that person, and in the spiritual part, we're all interconnected. So even in her existential state as a stranger, her innate modesty, which was her true divine Jewish soul, was visible to Boaz, so he could recognize her. So Ruth was the ancestress of King David, and resolving the paradox of true identity by reaching the ultimate essential divine identity of the Jewish soul is the essence of Mashiach. So the whole thing about our purpose in life is really to reach that point of Mashiach. And in the potential, he's there. And that's the mystery. So when one is not conscious of oneself, he's also not conscious of his merits or his sins. When you're not a person that's all day looking at yourself, of what you do, we're always introspecting on ourselves, we're always analyzing ourselves or analyzing other people. This makes us very corporeal. But when a person is able to transcend this part of himself and he connects to his essence and his oneness with Hashem, then the shortcomings and failings are covered. When you're tzniut, which means that you transcend your ego, you cover yourself, then you are able to not expose shortcomings and failings. You don't even see them. So by the cloak of modesty. So by covering himself, he covers and becomes oblivious to the sins of others as well. So at the same time, he becomes truly altruistic. This is true altruism. When one's own self occupies no place in one's consciousness, only the other exists. So true altruism is when we're not thinking so much about ourselves, when we're not thinking about ourselves. Like if you see someone that needs food, that is hungry in the street, you're not thinking, oh, you know what, I'm hungry, I need to feel good today, I'm gonna give him $1. Poor person. You're thinking about yourself, it's about you. But if you're not thinking about you and you're thinking, what does Hashem want me to do right now? What is the right thing to do? And if you see, the Torah tells you, if you see a person who is hungry and extends his hand, you have to feed them. And you do it because this is what it is, the right thing to do. You're not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about that person and that he should be okay. Then at that moment you are getting rid of your ego, you're transcending it, and you will become one with God. So paradoxically, however, it is precisely at this point of total self-abnegation that one true self shines. When you abnegate yourself, you become humble, you become little, then your true self can come out. But when we make ourselves so big, then the true self cannot come out, because what is coming out is the animal self. So self as I is merely the face of one's unrectified animal soul, and once all the superficial aspects of selfhood have been neutralized, the true divine self, one's soul's essence, can be revealed. So the whole purpose of modesty is to allow another person to come out. Is when you in your marriage, you're not worried about yourself, but you're worried about your husband's well-being, or your husband is worried about your well-being, that is true modesty. Because it's not about you anymore, it's about them. So you look at what they need and you give it to them. And in that way, you shine. Everything what goes around comes around. Once you make your king, your husband your king, he's gonna make you his queen. So here lies the lesson the Torah teaches us with regard to modest conduct, especially as it concerns husband and wife, both within and without the context of marital relationships. If one assumes that he can know his spouse, then the relationship automatically becomes reduced to superficial and mundane familiarity. So we really cannot know the other person completely. There's always facets of another person or of even ourselves. We cannot really know ourselves completely. Sometimes you're surprised. Sometimes you're in a situation and you behave in a certain way that you didn't know you could behave that way. It could be bad or it could be good, or hopefully good. But sometimes you find parts of yourself that you didn't even know they existed. So the relationship when we're in this way of trying to find the other, trying to know the other, it will always be fresh because there's always something new to know. So the Jewish marriage is spared this feeling of boredom and hostility because we have this beautiful gift that God gave us, which is family purity, in which the couple renews itself every month to a new profound way of relating to each other. So by virtue of their mutual acknowledgement of their unknowable essences, they remain forever like a virgin to one another. Every time they're together, it's a new experience. So no matter how well they know each other, there is always a dimension to the other soul that the one has yet to be touched. So on this level, every shared encounter really is the first. So I leave you here today. I wish you a blessed week, and remember, live a little higher. Thank you.